Well, hello there. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm drinking Step Ahead from Proud Mary Coffee. It's a pretty good coffee. I think I've realized over the past couple of days that the water here is not very good, and I think it's negatively impacting the quality of my coffee because I've been pretty unhappy with the coffee for the past couple weeks, which means I may need to get into the water world of coffee, which is a whole thing of, reverse osmosis or buying distilled water and then putting in minerals and things like that to adjust the flavor so it tastes better. I mean, I was spoiled in Portland where it was just fantastic water, and so that has a huge impact because 95% of what you drink of coffee is water. So the fact that it tastes bad to start with kind of impacts the final product. So today we're going to talk about cozy fantasy, and we're going to talk about something somewhat genre-defining books. And Legends and Lattes, written by Travis Baldree, published in November of 2022, is one of those genre-defining books. It is kind of the cozy fantasy book, and it was the first cozy fantasy book that I'd read so far. It was a nice, quick read, very easy. It didn't really have much going on in terms of stress. And it's very clear as to why this book is cozy. The majority of the story is just walking through and improving the capabilities of the Legends and Latte Cafe. And it's low stakes or no stakes, I think he calls it. And I think that I can see why it was written during the pandemic and, why people towards the end of the pandemic kind of latched onto it. Kind of the same way they latched on to Stardew Valley. And it was nice. It was just kind of like a feel-good story. And even before I read this book, I did a little bit of bits and pieces of coziness. And I did end up taking a page from this book, not literally, but using coffee as a motivator for comfort and cozy. In my misadventures of the Peanut Butter Boys, I had a chapter that takes place at my house in Portland, and it was after a very harrowing drive into the city, and the characters took a very significant pause to just enjoy coffee that I made and enjoy each other sitting on a porch and relaxing in before diving back into the chaos that was going to be happening in the rest of that chapter. And I had a friend who read the book who was like, that was my favorite part of the book. Like in all the chapters, that was that little section of like taking a deep breath and being there for each other and just getting to know the characters more. It really was impactful. So I've tried to take that lesson and try to incorporate that more into my writing. I don't necessarily think I've been perfect with it. I'm trying to do better with it, but it is, it's an interesting genre of book or a genre of writing. One of the things that Baldree does so well is explain how a person can rest into coffee. I mean, I really love coffee. If you couldn't tell from the start of the videos, I can't drink lattes, but I did used to enjoy the drink, and I think that there's a difference between just drinking a coffee, drinking a latte, and all the different styles of coffee that you can drink. There's a difference that is just that you can just kind of rest into. And I mean, because there's just so many different flavors, and the warmth of the coffee can also kind of help you relax in a way and just give you space to forget about things around you. And that's one of the things that I try and do with coffee every morning, is to kind of sit and just enjoy it, and kind of not worry about what the day is going to bring, because it's going to be stressful. Like I said in my book, I had my character make coffee for friends. I walked through the process for brewing coffee, and in that way, I let I use the coffee as a way for both the readers and the characters to rest in between major events. And I think that's changing pace within books is really important, and having these intimate moments can allow the story to breathe, and so you don't feel like you're just going from mad caper to mad caper to mad caper. There's like this breath in the middle where you can sigh and just say, okay, and recharge before you go into the next one. And thinking about that in the book that I'm writing right now, I noticed that I'm kind of just going boom, 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 boom. And I need to spread some of these things out, and give more space. Everything is happening in a very short period of time, and it feels like it'd be overwhelming. So Baltrey does a really great job of slowing down the story to allow readers and characters to sit with moments of enjoyment of both coffee and novel treats. I mean, they do a great job of creating new types of treats. They have talk through the recipes, and it's clear that the pastry chef knows what they're making, but the main protagonist has never had anything like it before, so they don't even know what it is. And I think that's kind of a fun thing to do. And he also does a really good job explaining how an espresso machine would exist, and how a grinder would work, and how coffee would work, and how experiencing a piece of pure chocolate would affect someone who's never had chocolate before. And I think that he does a good job explaining how you may have to learn how to drink and enjoy coffee, because it's going to be a new thing. Whenever we were younger, we talked about beer being an acquired taste, or wine being an acquired taste. I think some of that's true, but I also think it's, if you start with something that isn't really full flavorful, that allows you to kind of latch onto a variety of different flavors within it, and you just have like like a Bud Light. Yes, that is hard to acquire a taste for just Bud Light, in my opinion. I think if you had somebody start with, I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people start drinking beer through like the sweet stuff, or the cherry flavored things, or the ciders, because it doesn't taste like beer. It has this other flavor that is closer to something that you're already familiar with. And so I think that Baltrey does a really good job explaining how people can learn what a coffee is, or what a latte is, and then walks people through the process of why you should enjoy it, or how you should enjoy it. And it's also interesting the cost differences between how much, like between sweets and coffee. It feels like Viv is using coffee as a loss leader to get people in for the treats that I can't remember the character's name, but he's kind of a rat person, and he's an amazing pastry chef. And I thought it was really interesting just how she built the menu, and yeah, it was just really, really nice and organic. It didn't feel rushed, and it felt like she was open to people trying things. and giving them space to try and fail. Yeah, and I think that was pretty interesting. The second cozy fiction book I picked up was Psalms for the Wild Bill by Becky Chalmers, published in 2021. This was a short read. I kind of felt like it was a novella rather than a novel. And that's because it was only 107 pages long. I think the only other short book that I've read like that is the Butcher of the Forest, which was like 90 pages. Most of the books I read are typically over 300 to 1,000 pages long. You know, despite the short length, it really paced a lot into the short length. Like Legends and Lattes, this book has a cozy center. It's tea making. The main character, sibling Dex, is a monk. They travel from town to town to brew tea and listen to people, to help people with their woes and give them the grace to put down their burdens. Dex goes by they, them pronouns, and they use the gender neutral sibling instead of brother or sister. I still don't understand why people get upset over this. I mean, it's just a pronoun. It's just a title. It's not a big fucking deal. Like, it makes people feel more human. We should support that. Anyway, and it makes perfect sense within the story, and it flows really well that Dex is this non-gendered person, and the story doesn't make it lurid or anything like that. There's no descriptions to make you like wonder what they look like. It's like, if you had a character who was described as male, you wouldn't describe their genitalia. Why would you do that with someone with the they them pronouns? You don't need to do that because it doesn't matter. Like a lot of people, sibling Dex is trying to find more meaning in what they do, despite having a profession that is clearly meaningful to people around them. Being a tea monk, and they are good at it. They just feel like they wish there was more to life. So they go off and go on an unplanned adventure and meet a wild-built robot named Mosscap, which is named after a type of mushroom. The robots woke up to sentience some 200 years before the story takes place, and they've been living out in nature away from humanity, and they actually had an agreement with humanity that robots would be the group that made contact with humans and that humans would not go out and look for them. So in some ways, the robots became something of a myth. And I think it's pretty interesting. And this was the first meeting between humans and robots. And, Mosscap knew what humans looked like because they've seen dead humans. Basically people who went unprepared into the wilderness and didn't survive. I thought it was really, really interesting the way that they grew together as they learned more. Because, Dex decides to go on this trip to go to this specific temple, I guess you would say, hasn't been used in a couple hundred years. And Mosscap goes with them. And so that's part of the coziness, the relationship between the two of them, how they have to learn and interact with each other. In some ways, it's kind of like a meet cute where people are clumsy, trying to get to know each other, and have to work out how to even communicate. The other place where it's nice and cozy is Dex learning to become a tea monk. They didn't start out their career as that, and they kind of just jumped into it and learned as they went, and they failed, they had successes, and I thought it was really great. And I really did enjoy the relationship with Dex and Mosscap, and they didn't know what to call each other. There's a huge gap in knowledge and advantage. Mosscap knew so much more about humans and the natural world and robots than Dex knows about really much of anything. And Dex knows nothing about robots, what the robots are up to, how they spend their time, how they live, die. Dex didn't know that they died at all. And Mosscap acts like, well, yeah, of course. Do you think these we've been around for 200 years. No, I'm built from like 5 different robots. The interesting thing about these two books is the source of conflict within the story. I mean, you don't have a story without some conflict. In Legends and Latte, it's almost all external and trying to, around this, how Viv is able to be successful initially. While with Psalms of the Wild Build, it's almost intentionally internal. Viv essentially deals with the mob and a jealous former colleague, while Dex deals with their own discontent and trying to find out how to be themselves. I really enjoyed both of these books. I've been thinking about for a while what cozy really meant in fiction. It's really about low stakes rather than some crazy world-ending event. And I think, it's about writing scopes of stories or changing scopes of stories, because a lot of stories can feel disconnected, or like, even though there's all these wild, crazy events going on, there's no tension because there's nothing personal about the story. And these books are entirely personal, and there's no greater stakes. Everything is at the person level. If it's a Marvel type movie, it's like the street level where Peter Parker's out protecting Aunt May and trying to keep her safe, rather than Tony Stark fighting Ultron with it not really impacting anybody that he cares about. And the other thing is that despite the brutal violence at the beginning of the book, which is explicitly a transition that happens, is a very clear transition, and the fact that Viv could have gone back to that at any point, but she makes an effort and is supported by her friends to continue making that change to find other solutions, which are all possible. And it really shows violence isn't the only answer, and you can work around a lot of these things in many ways. I really did enjoy these books. I think that if you're looking for an easy way to get back into reading, definitely pick up these books. They're light reads. You don't even have to like tea or coffee to enjoy them, because they're just light, feel-good stories. And I know both of them have, LGBT leanings to them. Like the main protagonist of Legend of Latte clearly has romantic feelings towards another character, but it is not like it's the central point. It's just part of who the character is. It's no more pertinent than any other, little subtle love story is. It's a really sweet story. And I think it definitely would be interesting to write some stories in this style. As I said, that I've talked about in Misadventures of the Peanut Butter Boys, I've written at least some portions of chapters. But I do think that my Coffee Assassin short story is like very on point to this. It's very cozy, though the main character of the story dies. But it's a very meditative story that focuses on this last interaction between the assassin and this character, and them knowing that they're going to die, and the last coffee that they're going to drink, and the realization that they actually knew who the assassin was is interesting, and kind of makes it a really bittersweet story. What do you think about cozy fiction? Do you think it's kind of a silly or stupid genre, or do you think it's really an important genre for this day and age, given everything going on? What books do you think I should check out in the subgenre? I'm thinking of reading more of the Monk and Robot series, since they're quick reads. I can't imagine them being much longer than this. It kind of seems like there's one thing that happens and it kind of moves on. With the other books by Bald Tree, it feels like they go with different characters, and it's not like there's a true sequel. which was, I was kind of hoping there would be because I wanted to see people's reaction to the introduction of Mocha. But, I'm going to pick up some of these, probably read them in between heavier books just to have a change of pace. I want to thank you so much for spending your time watching this video. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment below about anything you want me to dig into, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a good one.